Welcome back, traveler. The fire is warm, and every fire has its story. So cozy up and prepare yourself for tonight's tale. For tonight's story is not written in the pages of history, but whispered between smoke and memory. Join me by the fire and enjoy the story. The bell rang across Grey Hollow like thunder, deep, ancient, heavy enough to seem felt inside the chest more than heard by the ears. The entire village froze. Lanterns flickered behind shuttered windows. The fog shifted violently through the streets, and high above the square, the great bell continued swaying slowly inside the tower, though no hammer struck it. The traveler stared upward in disbelief. "That's impossible." The scholar's voice trembled behind him. "It shouldn't be able to ring." But it had. And somewhere inside the fog, the listeners began moving, not quickly, not aggressively, only turning together toward the bell tower as though answering a call. The traveler counted at least 7 shapes surrounding the square now. Tall, wrapped in pale gray cloth that drifted unnaturally in the mist. None of them had faces the traveler could clearly see. Only darkness beneath lowered hoods. The woodsman stepped protectively in front of the frightened villager. "We leave now." But the young boy grabbed his sleeve desperately. "You can't leave him up there." The traveler looked toward the tower again. A shape moved behind the bells, slowly descending, using the ropes. The woman in green whispered, "The bell keeper." Another bell rang. This time the sound cracked across the valley harder than before. The fog recoiled outward from the tower in visible waves, and suddenly one of the listeners screamed. The sound was terrible, thin and unnatural, like metal scraping across frozen stone. The creature staggered backward into the mist, clutching its head beneath the hood. The traveler's eyes widened. The bells hurt him. The woman realized it at the same moment. "That's why they removed the hammers," she breathed. "They thought the ringing brought them." The scholar stared upward in horror. "But the ringing keeps them away." A third bell thundered across the valley. More screams answered from within the fog. The listeners retreated farther from the square now. Some vanished completely into the mist between the homes. The traveler looked toward the tower. The figure above continued descending slowly through the darkness, one rope at a time. Ring. Another bell shook the valley. The fog rolled violently around the rooftops now, and from every corner of Grey Hollow came movement. Villagers opening shutters, doors unlocking, faces emerging into the night. For the first time since arriving, the traveler saw hope in their eyes. The woodsman turned toward the chapel. "We need the bell hammers." Miriam had appeared at the doorway, clutching a lantern against the wind. She stared upward at the ringing tower with tears in her eyes. He returned. The traveler looked toward her sharply. "You know who it is." Miriam nodded slowly. "The last bell keeper." Lightning flashed beyond the hills. For one brief instant, the traveler saw the figure clearly high upon the tower stairs. An old man, thin beneath heavy robes, dragging lengths of iron chain behind him and around his waist, hung dozens of small, rusted bells. Dark fog swirled around the tower beneath him like living smoke, yet none of it touched him. The traveler moved toward Miriam. "Who is he?" Her voice shook. "His name was Father Aldrin. The monastery sent him here many years ago." The scholar stared at her. The monastery still existed. Barely. Another bell rang, louder, closer. Miriam continued. "When the disappearances began, Aldrin warned the village never to silence the bells. The woodsman cursed under his breath, but they did anyway. Miriam nodded weakly. The villagers panicked. They blamed the ringing. The firelight from nearby windows flickered across her pale face. So they climbed the towers. They removed every hammer. They cast them into the river. The traveler looked upward again. "And Aldrin," Miriam lowered her eyes. They locked him inside the tower. Silence followed. Even the wind seemed to vanish for a moment. The scholar whispered, "My God." Miriam's voice nearly broke. They believed if the bells stopped, the valley would finally sleep. Above them, another bell rang. The sound rolled through the mountains like distant thunder. And somewhere far beyond the village, something answered, not a scream, not an animal, something deeper, older. The traveler felt it in the ground beneath his boots. The listeners froze instantly throughout the fog. Every hooded head slowly turned north toward the dark hills beyond Gray Hollow. The woman's face lost all color. "It's coming." The traveler looked toward her. "What is?" But she never answered, because at that moment, the fog beyond the fields began moving, not drifting, not swirling, moving, as though something enormous walked slowly within it. Trees bent, dark shapes disappeared beneath the white mist. The bell tower rang again, faster now, desperate. Father Aldrin had reached the lower stairs at last. The old bell keeper stumbled into the square wrapped in chains and rusted bells. His beard hung nearly to his chest. His eyes looked hollow from years spent alone inside the tower. Yet he continued pulling the ropes with bleeding hands. Ring, ring, ring. The sound crashed through the valley again and again. Each ringing forced the fog backward, forced the listeners farther away. The traveler ran toward him. "Aldrin." The old bellkeeper looked up sharply. His voice sounded raw and broken from years of silence. "The hammers," he rasped. "We must restore the hammers." The woodsman stepped forward. They were thrown into the river. Aldrin shook his head violently. "Not all of them." He pointed toward the chapel. "Beneath the floor," Miriam gasped softly. "You hid them." Aldrin gripped the rope tighter. "I hid the last blessed hammer." Another deep sound rolled from the hills. Closer now. The ground trembled faintly beneath them. The scholar looked toward the moving fog in terror. "What is out there?" Aldrin's tired eyes filled with ancient fear. Then, finally, the bellkeeper spoke the name the valley had forgotten. "The Hollow Listener." Silence followed. Even the bells seemed smaller suddenly against that name. The old man continued. "It does not hunt flesh. It hunts silence." The traveler felt cold move through him. Aldrin pointed toward the chapel. "The bells must ring before it reaches the village." The woodsman turned immediately. "I'll get the hammer." "No," Aldrin snapped suddenly. His eyes fixed on the traveler instead. "You," the traveler frowned. "Why me?" The bellkeeper stared at him with strange intensity. "Because it already noticed you on the northern road." The traveler remembered the figure outside the tavern, the rope, the fog, the watching shapes. Aldrin's voice lowered to almost a whisper. "And because if the bells stop tonight, Gray Hollow will disappear before dawn." Behind them, something massive moved inside the fog beyond the fields, and for the first time since entering the valley. The traveler heard the sound of footsteps large enough to shake the earth itself.